Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing and trying on the mini palette bundle by Juvia'S Place. I actually purchased all four on the Juvia'S Place website. It's been a minute since I purchased these. I just hadn't had time to actually do a tutorial with them, but today I made time and I did one eye look from each of these palettes. So what I'm going to do is give you some quick information about these palettes and then we'll get into the eye looks. So the first thing I want to mention is that there's four palettes. These palettes in a bundle cost $52. Now you can buy these separately for $13.99 on Juvia'S Place website. I do know that they sell them at Ulta now, so you may be able to get like a coupon and use it towards the palettes if you decide to purchase them. Like I said, four palettes come in the bundle and I'm going to show you each one of these palettes. The first one is the Chocolates palette, and these are the shades that come in the Chocolates palette. Now they don't have any names on the palettes, so when I go throughout the eye looks, you'll see me just like pointing to the shade because there's no names on the front or the back. This one here is the Nudes palette, and then here are the shades here. The next one is the Violets palette, and these are the shades here. The last one is the Berries palette, and these are the shades in the Berries palette. Alright, so those are the four palettes. Each of the palettes actually come with 6 shades, and there are a mixture of shimmer shades and matte shades within each palette. What I want to do now is go ahead and get into the eye looks, and then I'll give you my thoughts on this bundle. Alright guys, now that you've seen all the eye looks, I do want to go into my thoughts about these palettes. So let me go ahead and get into the palette I had the most trouble with, and that's the Violets palette. So I went into this shade here and this shade here, and when I put those shades on my eyelid, I felt that those shades were really hard to blend. Not only that, I felt like there was not enough pigmentation on the corner of my eye when I applied the shadow. I actually had to keep going back into the palette to pick up product to put on the eyelid. That was a little bit more difficult for me to do. You have to actually build those shades up and then make sure you blend very well, because if not, it's gonna look really splotchy. So I did have trouble with those. I love the way these two shades went on. They went on really pretty on the eye. I started off with this shade all over the lid, and then I went in with this shade to kind of highlight the middle of the lid. So yeah, I really love those shades and the way they went on. This one did seem a little bit splotchy at first when I put it on, and I had to blend it a little bit more than normal. So this one was a little bit harder, but it wasn't that it was really hard to blend. It was just like when I put it on, it just kind of skipped a little bit. So that's the issue that I had with that one. But this one is very pigmented, very beautiful on the eye. So yeah, I really loved the eye look that I created, but I really felt like this was one of the harder palettes to use in the bundle. So now I'm going to mention my very least favorite palette, and it's the Nudes palette. The reason why this is my least favorite is because the shadows are very light. I really felt like when I put this on the eyelid that I wasn't really getting much back from this palette. It just looked like a very light, I'm talking very light eye look. I mean, it just didn't wow me. I will say that the shadows were easily blendable. So when you did put a shadow on your eyelid and you mixed it with something else, it meshed well together. So like this shadow right here, this is actually the darkest shadow in the palette, and that did look nice as a crease color, but it wasn't as pigmented as I thought it was. But when I added something else to it, it went well with that shadow. It didn't look like splotchy or anything. So this is my very least favorite because all the shadows in here are not as pigmented as I thought they would be. I will say that the two most pigmented shades were probably this one and this one here. So I'll do a little swatch of these so you can see. So these are the shades here. And those I felt were the most pigmented. Everything else went on really light on the eye. So this is a palette that I probably won't be picking up as often to create an eye look, but I will tell you what I will be picking it up for. One is this shade right here. That is the shade that I used for every eye look to actually set my primer. That's almost the same shade as my skin tone on my eyelid. So I used that shade for every single eye look to set the primer. Now, another shade that I would use is this one here. It is a nice transition shade, which I did use today for this eye look, but it's not very pigmented. So it's gonna be one of those really soft transition shades that you can use pretty much with any of these palettes. So I won't be using this palette on its own, but I will be using it to mix with the other palettes. Now, I did use a combination of this palette and the Chocolates palette on my eyes today. And I will say that that shade right there that I mentioned that was very pigmented, that is on my eyelid today. Okay, so enough about this one. So the next two palettes I'm gonna mention are gonna be my favorites of the bundle. The first one is the Chocolates palette. So this palette here is super beautiful on the eye. I loved the look that I created with this palette. I think it looked beautiful, it looked soft, it looked smoky. It just looked really nice on the eye. Now again, I did use this palette today with the Nudes palette for this eye looks. And I'll show you guys how I use both of these today in a bit. But getting back to this palette, it is a gorgeous palette, guys. This comes off so pigmented. Every shade in here worked beautifully on the eyes, blended well together, and I just love it. I just love the way this went on. This is what reminds me of the Juvia'S Place palettes because I have so many of them and I've loved every single one of them that when I had trouble with those other ones, I just felt like that's not Juvia'S Place quality. And I really feel like this one is. This one has every bit of saturated, blendable, velvety product that Juvia'S Place is known for. So anyway, this is one of my favorites. And the other favorite is the Berries by Juvia'S Place. This one goes on just like the chocolates. Every shade in here is pigmented, creamy, blendable, and I think that eye look that I created just came out beautiful. So yeah, I really like this one. I think this one is one of the best out of the 4, and this one is probably going to be one that I'm going to use throughout spring and summer because it has some really nice, beautiful, bright shades in there. So before I finish this, let me show you what I used on my eyes today. I did use from the Nudes palette this one to set the primer. I used this shade right here in the crease. Then I went into the Chocolates palette and I went with this shade in the crease. And then I used this shade on the outer corner. And then I went back into the Nudes palette and I used this shade right here on the lid. And on the bottom lash line, I used this shade first. Then I went into the Chocolates palette and used this shade. So yeah, I really liked how these two work together. So I'm not fully hating on this palette. There are 3 shades in here that I could use with the other palettes, and I will continue to use this one. So guys, that is it for my review and try on of the mini palette bundle by Juvia'S Place. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that every single one of you is staying safe and staying healthy. I'm praying for every single one of you and the world around us, and I'm also praying that this chaos will pass. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.